All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday night. It is Axis and Allies season. I think it's always Axis and Allies season around here. But we are ready for the live stream for round two of our coverage of the Axis and Allies Global Final from Gen Con in 2024. Who's getting ready for Gen Con 2025? Man, we've done a bunch of planning for that over the last week or two, or last few months, I suppose. Finally found a place to stay. So your old pal Gary will not be homeless. And we picked up some great volunteers, and we're really excited about Gen Con this year. If you have not been paying attention, the Gen Con badges, of course, are on sale. And if you want to go to Gen Con, of course, you're going to need one of those. I suggest buying them sooner than later. They sold out last year, which is the first time I can recall that happening. Like you couldn't buy a single day pass for any day last year. 71,000 of your closest friends were at the Indianapolis Convention Center last year, and it was a blast. We had a great time, but it was a lot, and we're expecting, I think, even more people this year. But so if you're interested in going, make sure that you get your badge, like I said, sooner than later. And you're going to want to have that because your tickets for various events go on sale on Sunday. That's this Sunday. So if you're interested in competing in any of your favorite Axis and Allies events, I suggest doing it pretty quickly on Sunday because they will sell out. Greg has a full slate of tournament events ready to go. Make sure that you're checking the event catalog for that to make sure that you're picking the right events. You will not be able to get into, this was a point of confusion last year, and I'll just go ahead and say it here. I'll probably say it again later. You cannot get into any of the Axis and Allies tournaments with a general ticket. You have to have a ticket for that specific event, and you need to buy that preferably sooner than later because, like I said, it's probably going to sell out. Some people made the mistake last year of purchasing like general admission tickets that you can use for playing the giant version of Catan or for a demo of this thing or that thing. They have like general tickets for those kind of things, but specific events like tournaments, you have to have the correct ticket. So make sure that you're purchasing those. Spring Gathering is coming up. That is also sold out, which is I think the first time I remember Greg ever actually selling that event out completely. Not just the scheduled events, but like the room is now at its capacity. So that's really exciting. So we're excited about that. We're going to be playing, Doug and I are going to be playing Anniversary together at the Spring Gathering this year. And I understand that there's a few people that are coming just to play against me and Doug, which I suppose I'm flattered by that. I don't know. It should be interesting either way, but we've got a lot of great folks already here. Tracy Hyde is here, and she has chipped with care. Thank you, Tracy. Chip with care. Very good, very good. Thanks for being here. Robin is here and will be on the live stream here in just a few minutes, along with his children, presumably. I don't know. They like to pop in and out. And Dave Whitfield is here. Good morning from Australia. Great to see you here, Mr. Coffee. I believe from the great city of Chicago, my kind of town that Chicago is. I absolutely love that city. Get up there as often as I can. I actually just got a message a couple days ago that there is kind of an impromptu meetup happening for Axis and Allies players in the Chicago area. I think it's Memorial Day weekend. Ping me if you're interested in that. I might be able to connect you with some folks in Chicago that are going to be getting together to roll some dice. So if you're interested in that, let me know. If anybody else is here, please let us know in the comments. We've already got a number of folks online. I'm going to send you to our hold screen now while I finish putting something together that we're going to be talking about today. There was a question in the comments, and I think it's a good one, that it would be helpful. A lot of the action in the global game is dependent on the national objectives. And so somebody asked in the comments if we could take a minute and go over those. I'm kind of throwing together, it won't be pretty, but I'm throwing together a quick little slide bit about those, pulling them from Greg's rules. So I'm going to send you to the hold screen and hopefully be able to knock that out in just the next couple of minutes. And we'll be able to see what we can talk about those when Robin gets here. We've already got a first super chat from Dave Whitfield. He wants to know, can Robin explain why the French are all allied? Seems to be a bit allied bias to not have the Vichy French. Yeah, that's a fair question, and I think it might have to do with the timing. I don't think that the global. I don't know. Well, I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about it. We'll get Robin on, and maybe somebody else that is in the chat here can tell us more about what this is. I think it might have to do with the historical timing. I don't know specifically when the Vichy French turned to the Allies. I know that it's represented in the North Africa game during Operation Torch. So there'll be some folks here. And Brian Hyde is here. Good to see you, Brian. Thanks for being here. And thank you for the super chat, Mr. Woodfield. We will see if we can get an answer to that question for you before the end of the show today. We would appreciate that. Okay, so Charles Micklick is here. Okay, I'm gonna put you guys on hold while let me work on this, and we'll come back and we'll be back in just a couple seconds. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves. You guys crack me up. All right, we'll be back in just a couple minutes. It won't be at the 40-minute timer like we had last week. I actually got the video done on Thursday, and got it out to the membership last night, and then out to the general public this morning at 10 a.m. So we've had, I don't know, some I think 1,400 people have already watched the video. So there'll be lots to talk about today. So we're excited about that. All right, so we'll be back in just a minute. So, oh, hit that like button for us while you're waiting, casually. Don't tell anybody. Just hit that like button. You don't have to remind anybody. And Jamie, the lovely and talented Jamie Blevins is here. Make sure you say hi to her. She is our moderator for the evening, in case Brian gets out of hand. I don't know. Whatever. We'll be back in a minute. And save. I think I just did it. 3 minutes flat. I made a 10 slideshow piece here, so pretty good. And yes, nice tie. I'm not sure what you mean, John. It is always date night when Jamie's around, and Jamie's here with me. It's always date night, so we're grateful that she is here. Um, and I was counting on this to happen. I knew this would happen. The French surrender to whoever in the moment is the current world conflict. That is, I expected our friends, our French friends, to take a shot there, but sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you got to do it. All right. So what else have we got going on? So we've got some great news. I took a trip last week up to Dayton, Ohio, where you might have heard that there's going to be a shiny new Axis and Allies event, and we toured the Hope Hotel. I'm going to have pictures for everybody probably Monday, so everybody can kind of get a feel for what that space is going to look like for us. Met the event staff, tried the restaurants. Everything seems really pretty nice. It's interesting because they said that the hotel was on the base or near the base. It was a little confusing, but now that I've been there, it makes a lot more sense. So when you pull into the driveway, if you go straight, you run right into the gate with the guards, right? Don't go that way. But if you turn right from that driveway, you see a sign that says Hope Hotel, and that's where we're going. And then there's a road that goes down, and it's fenced on both sides all the way down, and it turns a little bit to the left, and then it opens up to like a big parking lot, and then the hotel and the convention center, and it's beautiful, and it's got very nice landscaping and everything, and it's perfectly nice. But when you stop for a minute and look around, you realize that you're entirely fenced in, and everything outside of the fence is the base. If you try to jump that fence, someone's going to have something to say to you. So it is. So don't do that. Don't jump that fence. It's not. It's not. No bueno. But it is literally on the base. And I was informed that if you're at the Hope Hotel and you call 911, you don't get Dayton police. You get the base military police. If you ask for a fire department, it's the base fire department that's coming out. So I think that's. I hope none of that happens. But I thought that was. It's going to be a very safe event, my friends. It's going to be a very safe event. So we're excited about that. We're thrilled to get a chance to visit them and see what that's all about. So the room is big, and we're gonna have a lot of space, which we're really excited about. And like I said, the restaurant was good. We had some burgers that were just massive, and so that's exciting. But I'm actually going to get a chance to stay there. As it turns out, I wasn't planning on it, but as it turns out, I will be staying there tomorrow night. Uh, I'm headed out tomorrow morning. I'm happy to stay as long as everybody as long as I can. But um, I have a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow morning to take me back to Dayton, where I'll be attending Duel in Dayton, Robert Phelps's event. They'll be playing the Young Grasshopper variant, and I've been really interested to check that out. So we'll be in that fair city to check it out and meet those guys and see what that variant is about. It should be a lot of fun. And then I fly home on Sunday. So I'll be back in the studio on Monday morning to continue to work on stuff for Battlefront Dayton. And then part 3 of this series, we'll be certainly working on that and getting ready for the Spring Gathering. We've got a lot happening in the Spring Gathering. I think we're going to be live streaming there on Thursday. We're going to be playing all kinds of, I think we might be playing Lord of the Rings Risk. I'm not sure, on Thursday night, just for something different, something fun. And because Friday, Saturday, Sunday is going to be, or I'm sorry, Friday and Saturday. Spring Gathering is Friday and Saturday in Wilder, Kentucky, and that event is I think we're playing 4 rounds of Anniversary, um, so it should be pretty good. So yeah, Sir Bacon here is asking. It's Wright Patterson Air Force Base, so we're going to be right outside the Air Force Base there. So, and they've got 2 big like jets that are mounted look like they're kind of coming over the fence. It's pretty cool. Um, so I'm sure there'll be folks over there taking pictures and whatnot. So I know I did because I'm a nerd and I thought it was cool. But yeah, so I'll be in Duel in Dayton this weekend, and I'll come back with a full book report on what it was like to stay in the hotel and all of that. So, yeah, it was fun. We also, while we were there, I had Thomas Haver, who lives in Columbus and is one of the co-designers for Diplomacy Era of Empire. I had him. I asked him to meet me in Dayton while I was at the Hope Hotel, and I needed to shoot the how to play for Diplomacy Era of Empire, and who better to explain it than one of the co-designers? And what better place to shoot a how to play for diplomacy than the Hope Hotel, which is where the Dayton Accords were signed, actually 30 years ago, this coming November. And if you don't know, the Dayton Accords are the peace accords that were signed, like I said, in 1995, that ended the Kosovo War. And so we've got a couple of folks that are here with us today that were active duty sailors. I think they were both in the Navy and served in that theater. So this particular place, I think, might have a special meaning to them, because it was one of the things that they were kind of fighting for, was to make sure that there was peace in that space. And so we're excited about that. So it's I think it's very cool. I'm excited. When I will tell you that when we were there, like, everybody, every hotel or every like small town, they always say that the historic downtown or the historic hotel or whatever. This is really a historic hotel, right? Like this is where serious, fairly modern history happened. So I think it's pretty cool. So I'm excited about it. But all right, so yes, the Bosnia. Yeah, that was a sad chapter in the Balkans for sure. So we're glad that got resolved. But it is now time to bring in our special guest for the day, Mr. Robin Bielefeldt. Everybody say hi, Robin.
Hello, everybody. How you doing today, Gary?
Get the glockenspiel. You gotta get the glockenspiel. I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Doing fine. Yeah, it's been a busy day, so it's quite an interesting one. But a lot of comments on the video so far, on the part two, and a lot of questions. So I'm eager to get into it.
Yes. Yes. Actually, so there's our first question is about Lord of the Rings Risk. Let's kick it off this way. Can I play as Sauron?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. In fact, if I remember right, it's up to 4 players, and there's 2 good guys, 2 bad guys. So I think it's like the orcs and the Uruk-hai. I think is one side. Maybe it's Sauron and Sauron that are.
Yeah, so, yeah. There's 4 factions. When you play the team risk variant, um, there's 2 good guys, there's 2 bad guys. Usually, the way it works out is that one of the good guys takes over Gondor and tries to get that continent, and then the other guy kind of tools around in the north, plays like the Rivendell elves, and then between the 2 bad guys, one of them. The player who has the most strongholds in Mordor, and we can talk about strongholds later, but the player that owns the most strongholds in Mordor at the start of the game goes last in that variant. So that's the player that's kind of as Sauron, and then the other player kind of does the Saruman Isengard type thing. So
Yeah, I haven't played that one in ages, man. I gotta. If we're gonna play on the Thursday of spring, I need to.
I did brush up on the rules slightly, but
I'm definitely
it's
gonna
just
need to
gonna be
brush
a
up.
fun game, okay? It's just that we're having fun. And by the way,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to say where Tom Haver lives, so because he's in the witness protection program. So
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Well, that Tom Haver's not really his name, so it doesn't really matter. His cover identity lives in Columbus, Illinois. I don't know. Anyway, you probably have a better answer to this than I did. Dave wanted to know if you can explain why the French are all allied. Seems to be that it's a bit allied bias to not have them be the Vichy French. I wonder if you've got any thoughts about this.
yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of house rules that you can put in there to change up the French, but just for the sake of clarity and game flow. They even say in the rule book that they don't touch on the whole Vichy French collaborators thing in the Global 40 rules. So they're a regular allied power like anyone else. In Global 40 they get kicked over at the very beginning of the game, and then if they're ever liberated, it's a huge deal. It's a huge win for the Allies because they get a whole bunch of French infantry, and once the French are liberated in this version, they usually make about 14, 15 a turn, but they only have a minor complex. So, but it's I don't want people to get the wrong idea about the balance of this game from what you're seeing here. This is a lot of trial and error to get to the point where I had my allied strategy down. And since I've never played against my own allied strategy, I can't comment on how difficult it is to stop. That's more for next week. That's for Charles to talk about. So I know how powerful it can be, and I'm, I'm worried that when I'm doing this, part of me is like, well, don't spill everything that you're going to do. But these guys that I play against in the tournaments, they've seen this over and over again for the last 10 years, so they know exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah, we had this. Doug and I had a similar conversation when it came to the Thorpe Thump, right? The idea that like the he primarily, but through playtesting, I had some part in some of the finer details of it. But the idea that like you're sharing your greater strategy with the world, and to me, the idea is like I I make these videos and talk about strategy because I want to advance the game. I want more people to I want the game to get better. I want players to feel stronger, right? And I think that the game has advanced. I think one of the big advances that came is when 1942 Online came out, and we had a lot more people playing. Um, you could play 5 games at a time, right? And you just get so many more reps when you're playing in that kind of environment than you can when you're playing one on one. That invariably strong strategies are going to develop and they're going to rise to the top. But even then, like, let's talk about them, right? Let's find what we think the meta is, and then how to break that meta, and what that really looks like. So,
Yeah, I mean that's the entire purpose behind the bidding, that we do. And if people don't want to play against my strategy, then they need to give me the access with the transport at least. So, I mean, and I've seen other strategies too. There's a lot of really power. A lot of people are really fanatic about this game. But I wouldn't call this a broken game by any stretch of the imagination. Just
no, I don't think so.
because just because the allies have a little bit of an advantage, it can be easily fixed. It's just since nobody's figured out how to stop this thing except for the one person that'll go nameless here. But and that's the whole point. You have to come up with some kind of way to stop it. So, and if somebody does, then congrats. But I just if there is a new team out there that's going to be playing in the global, I want you guys to forget what you see here so that you can just take all your Germans and throw them all into Russia and just pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. And these aren't the droids you're looking for. And
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm afraid that's not how it works. But I will say that I found it remarkable. So we put out the videos for the 2023 World Championship, and where we talked extensively about the Thorpe Thump, right? And then when we walked around the tables and looked at the 42 second edition tournament in 2024, like almost to a man, it was the Allies were playing some version of the Thorpe Thump. And we even saw it in the final match where they were trying to play some kind of modified version of the Thorpe Thump, and it didn't go particularly well for them. But they made a couple of tactical errors, and that is going to happen. And they also had a couple of bad rolls, but which led to Owen and his partner winning, which I thought was great. I love like the two young guys like took it down, which Alex and Owen, they took it down in their first tournament ever, and I thought that was great. I was super happy for them, and I remember seeing them like on site that day, and they just like they were just like smiling idiots the whole for the rest of the time. They were just standing there smiling. I thought it was
I think
great.
you dropped that bomb on the 42 tournament and then switched over to World Championship. They switched to the anniversary game the next year, so nobody could use your strategy in the World Championship. That's
Yeah, well, I will say, well, there. I don't know. Doug and I have talked about, like, is there a way to modify the Thorpe Thump to be as effective? Is there as strong a Kill Japan First in Anniversary as there is in 42nd edition? Um, if there is, we haven't necessarily found it yet. Um, maybe we'll find it at the Spring Gathering. I'm not really sure, but we'll find out. Um, but we'll see. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But Thomas Haver's here. Hey, Thomas.
All right, Dave is saying loud, so let me find a way to turn that down here.
I'm being told I'm very quiet.
All right, so should we turn you up or should we turn me down?
I'm going to turn you down just a little bit, and I'm going to turn me up just a little bit. Is that better? Let me know if that's better. We're going to keep going here. Bring this up just a little bit. Hopefully that sounds a little bit better. Thank you for letting us know, David. We will hopefully adjust that. Okay, du jour. Dave, du jour. Hey, Dave. Yeah. Okay, so I brought mine up, and I brought Robin down a little bit. Hopefully that'll balance us out. Thank you for letting me know, because I can't really tell on this end. All my mixers look equal, so hopefully that works. I wonder. Yeah. All right. Okay. So I hope that that's better. We've had a couple of people asking about the national objectives thing. So first thing to know is that this 125 IPC threshold thing that the Axis win with does not take into account national objectives. You have to be hard earning the 125. And so objectives are important in terms of, like, they have a tendency to steer or play, right? But when it comes to rubber and the road and all of that, then I don't know that they're not going to be the end all be all. That's for sure. Okay,
Yeah,
so
and
I'm talking at my normal
I mean,
level. Tell me, Robin, what do you think about national objectives?
so, and it's also worthy to point out that, like the strict neutrals that are on the board, that counts towards the Axis 125. So when you're talking about a strict neutral attack at the end, at that point, we thought the game was Axis bias just because they could do that and they could pick up that money. There's $2 in Turkey, there's $2 in Spain, there's $3 in Sweden. There's all this territory that they can pick up on the board. As far as the bonuses go, like I said in the video, I don't know if global would work without them. I understand that the 20 bonus for the United States. I mean, that kind of makes it on par with other Axis and Allies games where the U.S. kind of rides to the rescue of the Allies. The Allies are on defense right away, especially the UK. And I don't know. We have played global one time without bonuses, without any of the political rules. That was a long time ago, and it seemed to work out well. I'd be interested to try it, but I mean, it's such a good game and it's so balanced. Anyways, I'd be wary of mixing the national bonuses in any kind of tournament rules, just because I think the board is designed with those in mind. So.
Yeah, I mean, I will. Yeah, my general opinion of national objectives in general to is the lighter the better, right? I don't love the idea of one arbitrary rule steering my strategic choices, right? It kind of takes away the sandbox nature of the game, and so it's okay, but it like I said, lighter the better, and I think that I don't know whether these are the right balance. It sounds like it balances the game pretty nicely, so that's good. But yeah. Okay, so let me flip over to this shot here. I'm going to see if this is going to work for me real quick.
So yeah, I mean, when I first started playing Anniversary, when it first came out, we decided to try a game with the bonuses, and I felt similar to you. I was like, I don't really like this because it's gonna, if it's something that's gonna tip the game one way or the other, I'd rather just play mono a mono without the bonuses. But once you start playing global, Europe 40, Pacific 40, especially Europe 40, I don't think the game would work without them. Just because of the size and the scope, and it's how these minor powers have incentive to go out and expand. Like Australia, why would they ever go to New Guinea if it wasn't for their $5 bonus that they get? Or why? What incentive would the Germans have to go to the Middle East? Why don't they just let the Japanese take it? Well, because the Germans get national bonuses for it. So yeah, but it's just my 2 cents on it. Yeah, I mean, let's go through the bonuses one at a time.
Hey, that actually is probably the best this has ever lined up. Except I need to get myself off the screen here. Hold on. Here, I'll move me up here. I'm in a weird corner. I'm not normally up here. It's freaking me out. Okay, so Global 42 national objectives. These are any of these? So I pulled these off of Greg Smorey's tournament rules. Hey Nathan, good to see you, brother. Um, the Are any of these different than what's in the rule book?
So there are in the rulebook, and I touched on this in the video. In the rulebook, there are bonuses for if your power is not at war. So like if Germany and Russia are not at war from the start, then Germany gets a $5 bonus. None of that applies in Global 42 because everybody starts at war.
Right.
So Japan, I forget if it's 5 or 10. They get a bonus for not going into French Indochina because
Right.
the cut the oil off at that
Sure.
point. But yeah, none of those pre-war objectives apply here. So we'll just stick to the global 42 bonuses.
Okay, so something else that we should probably have here just to make it a little bit easier for people to see what's happening is there we go. We're going to want to have, oh, come on. I need my brain to work. Here we go. We're going to want to have the global map available for people to look at. Okay. All right. So we're going to change this real quick. Thank you for your patience. Kind of rolling on the fly here. Okay. All right, good. So that'll work. Okay. So Germany's national objectives, they get 5 IPCs if they control both Denmark, Norway, while Sweden is still neutral. And not pro allies. So if they attack a strict neutral, that would cause them to lose that bonus, right?
Right.
Um,
So it's another incentive for Germany to not do the strict neutral attack super early, not until they're ready to go into Sweden and take that territory. That bonus is kind of designed for early in this game. It's one that the Germans are going to get on turn one, turn two, that kind of thing, until the Western Allies can get up to Norway, or the Soviets have to devote resources over that way to get it. So, that's Japan. That's Germany's usual $5 bonus that they get.
right. Okay. So 5 if Germany controls Moscow. So because they'll need more money if they're controlling Moscow. But that seems like a weird one. 5 if they control Stalingrad. 5 for Leningrad. If at least one German land unit is in Axis-controlled Egypt. Okay, so if they take Egypt and there's a German there, they get another 5.
Right, but
5
the Axis don't.
IPCs.
Germany doesn't need to control Egypt, so there's
Right,
a $5 bonus for each of the 3 victory cities in Russia, so it's incentive for them to go that way. So,
right,
and then
right,
usually later in the game, if the Germans have a fleet like they do in this game, they can get up to Leningrad and they can replace the Norway bonus with that $5 bonus for taking Leningrad. And then the one for Egypt is difficult. That's they kind of start with troops that are in Africa. So the Italians pretty much have to take it, and then the Germans can just leave one land unit in there, and then they get a $5 bonus for that. So
yeah. 2 IPCs if Germany controls Persia. 2 IPCs if they control Iraq, or if they control Northwest Persia. So it definitely seems like they're in. that the Germans are incentivized to push at Moscow and the Middle East, and less so to push to Africa.
Yes. So there's just $1 bonus for Egypt, but yeah, don't sleep on that 5 for Caucasus, since it's right next to Stalingrad. It makes a huge difference if the Germans can punch through into the south of Russia. It's pretty much over because their economy is just going to be so great because they're going to be getting both of those bonuses, and they'll have that minor factory in Stalingrad, and they can send forces down to the Middle East to collect those other bonuses. So.
Right. So here's Caucasus, and that's kind of the road, I suppose, to Stalingrad, right?
Yep.
So I think it feels like those incentives push them to go Syria, Iraq, Northwest Persia, Caucasus to Stalingrad, right? Like that's the
Right. That's what you're
okay.
seeing Carl and Jake do in our game. So.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. Next, the Soviets get a 10 IPC one-time bonus. The first time Germany controls Berlin. Um,
Yeah.
that that can happen, I suppose. Um,
Yeah, I showed you one. I've seen it one time, so I showed you one picture of a Soviet tank in Berlin, and that was
here, let's go up here.
it's the exception. It's not the rule. So
Yeah, that seems like a rarity. 5 IPCs if C Zone 125 is free of Axis warships. Archangel is controlled by the USSR, and there are no Allied units in any Soviet territories. So let's look at where
yeah, so
125 is. This
three
is
conditions.
125.
Okay, yep. So that sea zone where the submarine is parked right now, the
Right.
Soviet submarine that's doing the convoys on Norway. The so this is the usual $5 bonus for the Soviets, but there's 3 conditions that have to be met. There's a reason why you don't see a bunch of Allied bombers and fighters landing in Russia like you would normally see in any other Axis and Allies game. It's because of this $5 bonus. They want that bonus. And then, so if the Germans, say, didn't hit the British fleet on turn 1, then they would have a submarine left over, and they could just go park it up in that sea zone 125, and that would take that Russian bonus away, at least on turn 2. So it's usually a pretty good idea for the Germans to keep some kind of fleet alive just so they can get up there and take that bonus away. But then, of course, with the way the turn order works, the UK can kill it, whatever submarine or whatever that's in 125 before the Russians go, so that they can get their bonus. So it's a trade off, but so that's the easiest bonus for the Russians to get is that 5.
Yep. 3 IPCs for each German, Italian, or pro-Axis neutral territory that the USSR controls. Okay, so if
Right.
they
So
take a German territory, an Italian territory, or a pro-Axis neutral territory, they get an extra 3 IPCs. So this is why they got the 3 IPCs for taking Northwest Persia.
Iraq. Yeah. So they don't get the Germans bonuses for Northwest Persia, but when they move that 1 infantry into Iraq, that's a pro-Axis neutral territory. So that's why they
Iraq,
moved it.
that's what I meant. Yeah, pro-Axis neutral.
So
Uh-huh.
pretty valuable for the Russians if they can get into Europe, because every territory in Europe is German or Italian controlled. So it's a huge amount of money for them, and it might just be 3 IPCs, but goodness, it ends up quick in the semifinals against Robert Phelps and his team. Steven had punched through all the way to Italy, and he collected 91 on R6. So just from all the bonuses that he was getting, and that was more than double what the Germans and Italians were making combined. So.
Question from Dave DeJour here. Are bonuses collected when the rest of the income is collected at the end of the turn? I believe the answer to that question is yes.
Absolutely, yes. So, except for like I said in the video, there's 2 bonuses that are the exception to that rule. But otherwise, every single bonus is checked for and collected at the end of the turn when you collect money.
It'd be interesting to think about what that would mean if they were collected at the end of the round. Like if you could. Anyway, all right, moving on. Lots to get through. So that's the Soviets' objectives. The United Kingdom, you'd think they'd have more, but I guess this is what they've got.
There's a lot of
They
bonus rule book for the UK, but for Global 42, the only one that applies when they're at war with is the two that you see here.
So that is awarded to the European economy, 5 APCs if the UK controls all of its original territories in the European economy. This is why we saw the Germans pop out and grab, or the Italians rather, pop out and grab Cyprus, because that negates this $5 IPC bonus. It seems like kind of an easy way to do that. It almost seems like it's almost too easy, right? Like it seems like
British, they almost never get that bonus, just because the Germans usually just march a transport over there and grab it. But you have to sacrifice a transport in order to do that. The British have plenty of planes that can go over there and kill that German transport. So, in the interest of keeping the German transport, he stayed out of there. He kept the transport alive, and then he just took it with the Italians. So you actually see in this game the British get that bonus on UK1, but
right.
spoiler alert, they're never going to get it again because it's really difficult to.
And it would seem very difficult for them to do that. This is a good question too, Dave. Or if they got the bonus at the beginning of the turn rather than
Like where
at the
you
end.
you collect money at the beginning and then or you get
Right,
your
you have
guys
to
at the
hold
beginning.
it. Right, so you'd have to take whatever it is what's going to give you the bonus and hold it for the full round before you could get paid for it.
Yeah.
So it
Make
was
you work.
interesting that, because that's actually how some of the newer games are going, like Battle for the Deep and the GI Joe games, where they're collecting money at the beginning of the turn rather than at the end, uh, which is which slows production a little bit, because you can't grab a thing and then collect, right? You have to grab it and then things can be taken from you. And so at the
Yep.
beginning of your turn, you're typically starting with fewer resources. But if your actual national bonuses in a game like this collected at the beginning of your turn, I think that would make a big difference in the game. That's an interesting. That's
Yes.
an
The other
interesting idea.
bonus is much more difficult, and that would actually go to the Pacific economy, and they have to control Hong Kong and Malaya, which I've seen it happen once in a game of Global 42, and I was actually against Charles and Carl. So, and they just completely ignored that area of Asia and let the British expand out, and they actually were able to pick that bonus up. But
Sure.
yeah, very unlikely it's going to happen.
Yep. Italy's got a pretty healthy stack of options here. They get 5 IPCs if the Axis powers control at least 3 of the following territories: Gibraltar, southern France, Greece, or Egypt. I'm realizing that there's a typo there, but that's okay. So basically, they get 3 of the 4 corners of the Mediterranean. If they can hold 3 of those, they get 5 IPCs as a bonus. Um, that doesn't seem like it would be terribly hard, but it would take a concerted effort, right?
So, they can go over and grab Gibraltar for that bonus, but they're never going to be able to keep it because the U.S. and the U.K. are both just one turn away from grabbing that. So it's further incentive for the Italians to go into Egypt. Not only for that, but then they can maybe get the Germans their bonus. And I don't want to say it's impossible for the Axis to take Egypt because it is very possible, but it's very difficult, and the amount of resources that you would have to spend down there in order to grab it, is it worth it? Maybe, maybe not. So, but and then yeah, I mean this is what I'm talking about. So there's a bunch of national bonuses for like the smaller powers because that allows them to compete a little bit more and to get into the game.
Right.
So it's not as important for Germany. It's not as important for Russia. It's hugely important for Italy. So because
Right.
it's just not enough IPCs on the board to make it worth them to go pretty much anywhere. So, this is
Right.
what allows them to compete.
So it certainly looks like they're pushing them in North Africa here. 5 IPCs if they control Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Tobruk, and Alexandria, which that does seem possible. That doesn't seem like it would be all that difficult. I mean, there's just the 2 French guys there, right? If the UK decides to push out here, that would make it harder for sure. But
then they might give up Egypt. Yeah. So, and if
right.
if the Allies need to go down there to take territory from them, then that's less guys that are in Europe. So, I would call this probably the second most likely bonus for the Italians to get. And then the next one you're going to talk about, that's the one that they almost always get. So
5 IPCs if there are no Allied surface warships in the Mediterranean. So you could have subs there, and that would not negate this bonus. But if they've got any surface warships, then they don't get the 5 IPCs. But it would seem like it would
right,
be
so
pretty hard for the Allies to maintain a fleet there in the Med, unless they significantly invested in that space or sent units down from the UK or from across from DC.
yeah,
That
I
would
mean
be pretty
they
hard.
start with a lot of planes on the board, but they just don't have any way to leverage those planes into the Med without spending a bunch of money. That's one of the reasons why you saw my aircraft carrier move over from India here on UK2. I want to say mine. It's Mike's aircraft carrier. But and then from the Horn of Africa, you can just go directly into the Med. Put 2 planes on them, and then maybe build an air base in Egypt for the other planes, that kind of thing. If we were really devoted to taking out the Italian bonus, that'd probably be the way that we go. But it's the one that the Italians are almost always likely to get. So
I would
because
imagine that there's a pretty good argument for a minor complex in Cairo, um,
yeah,
and because then like you build the minor complex, and if you've done it the same turn that you brought this carrier over, then on the next turn you drop a couple of destroyers. End of 98, you bring the carrier in, you put a couple fighters on it. Now all of a sudden that's a thing that's going to be a problem for the Axis and the Med.
powerful things that the UK can build to get into the Mediterranean and force is submarines. So, I mean, if you think about the Strait of Gibraltar, like I said in the video, subs can go right through there. So, if the UK decides that they're just going to take the Italians out, they build a bunch of subs and then send them into the Med. It won't negate their bonus, the $5 bonus. But if you look at where the convoys are in the Middle East, what is that? C Zone 97
Right.
has a convoy marker on it, and that touches all of the Italian money. Practically everything is now. So, and subs roll 2 convoy dice every turn. So, if you're bound and determined to keep the Italians from building anything, bombing is not the way to go. The way to go is to get some surface warships into the Med and then start convoy disrupting the Italians in the Adriatic. So,
Right. All right, so the Italians also get 2 IPCs if Italy controls Iraq, if they control Persia, or if they control Northwest Persia. I think, and I think Paul called this right. Like they need oil, and this is kind of a way to represent that. So this is one of the kind
these are
of
the same
resource.
bonuses that.
Hmm?
So, so they're competing over that territory, basically. So it's whoever gets there first.
Right. I think this is a nice way to represent um, you know, the resources aspect of the game. Right. Is to do it
For
without
Bacon,
the.
to explain convoys as soon as we're done with the bonuses. I don't want to get off track.
Okay. Okay. So that's Italy. Bacon. We'll double back to the convoy question. We'll come back to that when we get through with this. The United States has a couple of big bonuses that they can collect. 10 IPCs if the U.S. controls all of these territories, which is basically all of the homeland.
If they ever lose, that's very bad for them. So
Yeah, I mean,
they're always good.
yeah, it's a bad day if there's Japanese guys in San Francisco.
The man in the high castle.
Exactly. Yes, it's a great show, by the way. 5 IPCs
Yeah,
if they.
but
Yeah, 5
anyway.
IPCs if they control the Philippines. 5 IPCs if the U.S. controls Mexico, Southeast Mexico, Central America, and the West Indies. So that they're almost certainly going to hold all of that, unless
Yeah, that's
there's a
another.
stray transport that jumps out and grabs something, right?
Yep.
5 IPCs if the U.S. controls all of the following territories: Alaska, Aleutian Islands, Hawaiian Islands, Johnston Island, and Line Islands. So let's take a quick look at where all of that is.
This is the one bonus that the U.S. usually gets that the Japanese can affect. So Johnston is and Line are both to the south of Hawaii. And if they lose Hawaii itself, they lose that bonus. If they lose the Aleutian Islands, even though they're not worth anything, they lose that bonus. They lose Alaska, they lose that bonus. So this is the one U.S. bonus that the Japanese are actually threatening.
Right.
That they normally get.
So they can break this up. In theory, they could do this pretty significantly.
Yeah. Yeah. So the U.S. can always count on the first 15 there, and then the way the board state is in Global 42, they're also collecting that 5 for that. So.
All right. So the last one is 5 IPCs if there is at least one U.S. land unit in the territory of France. If the Americans are standing in Paris, they get an additional 5 IPCs.
Right. So there's an incentive to go either way for the U.S. If they go hard and heavy into the Pacific and they can get into Manila and take that, then that's a $5 bonus for them. If they can get, if they go the other way, they have a huge incentive to get it into Paris because then they can get that 5. And then they also get the French bonus that we'll talk about now.
Right. So this is not really a national objective for the French, but it's something that triggers for them. If the territory of France is liberated by the Allies, the players controlling France immediately place up to 12 IPCs worth of any French units on the territory of France for free. This only happens once per game. So that's interesting. I don't know. I guess before I read this just now, I was under the impression that it was always infantry that would populate the space, but it can be
it pretty much always
venue.
is. If the Allies have plenty of infantry already, then they can buy something else. But so it's just
tanks
it frees
fighter
them up to do that. Yeah, Viva la Revolution. So
the French bomber. That's what I want. I want the French
the
bomber.
French bomber.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome.
I like to play with a house rule where if the French ever buy a battleship, the Allies win immediately. So, because they would have to be liberated, they would have to save, they would have to buy a minor complex on the coast, and then they'd have to buy it. So
that would
it's never.
That's kind of fun. I like that. Anzac. They get 5 IPCs if the Allies, not including the Dutch, control Dutch New Guinea, New Britain, and the Solomon Islands. So they have to control all of those. That is.
Yeah, you can excise the portion about being Dutch because it's already got a Japanese marker on it. It doesn't matter. So the 2 New Guinea territories, and then the Allies already hold the Solomons, but New Britain is Japanese and it has 2 guys on it. So it's going to be a tough nut to crack for the Anzac to get that. Usually their money is more the moneyed islands of the Dutch East Indies, Sumatra, Java, that kind of thing. That's how they make more. But if they're going for an additional $5 bonus, if they can get that $5 bonus and Anzac starts making 15 a turn, it's very, very powerful. So usually I like to go for that bonus instead because there's no incentive for the Japanese to go that way. But we'll talk about the Japanese in a minute.
Yeah. 5 IPCs if the Allied powers control Malaya and Anzac controls all of its original territories. Okay.
Yeah, so that's just to not incentivize the Anzac to just throw away a guy to go take Malaya. It's just so that if you're getting the first bonus, then your next stop is going to be to try to get the second bonus, which would be Malaya. You essentially can't get the Malaya bonus without having the first bonus too. So, and if Anzac ever collects both of them, pretty much game over in the South Pacific.
Right. I will say it seems like the way that is skewed is if Japan is focused entirely on China and trying to take Calcutta, then they're probably paying less attention here. So there's more of an opportunity for Anzac to kind of sneak up here and pick off these 2 guys and grab the other territories. But if they're out here harassing Hawaii, as we see in our game that we're in the progress of now, then there's no real way that they can do this. But there might be an opportunity to jump over here and grab Malaya, and
Right.
that might be a way to get um, one or the other of the bonuses. And I imagine it would have to be fairly late game if there was ever a possibility of Anzac taking both. And Japan will need to have collapsed at that point to
Yeah, I
make
see.
that a realistic option.
You know, some players when they play Anzac, they buy ships and planes and stuff like that. It's not a bad idea. It's just I personally I know how Charles and Carl are going to play, and I know especially when I saw this J1 transport buy, and can Charles win the game just by buying transports? I don't know. But
Maybe.
when I see that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, if he does go to Australia, I need to have a fight back there, and a couple of ships aren't going to help me do that. So it's usually guys, 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 until you have just a massive stack of Australian troops, and then you can always put those guys on transports later. So there's no reason not to buy the guys. So it's usually just guys. If you're buying ships though, you can go for that bonus. So
Yeah.
it's if you get the first bonus, your next stop is the second bonus. So
Yep. All right, so China, they get 6 IPCs if the Burma Road is open. This is something that we talked about in the beginning of part one. The Allies have to control India, Burma, Yunnan, Sichuan, and then not only do they get the 6 IPCs, but they may also purchase artillery, which is fun.
right. So like you were talking about, somebody that had mentioned, what would it be like if you got your national bonuses at the beginning of the turn? Well, this is one of those bonuses. So if China liberates the road on their turn, which is more likely, if they're ever going to collect this, that's the most likely outcome is that they attacked a territory on the road and they took it, and then that completed the road so that they get their 6. But if they hold that Burma road for the entire turn, then they get to put some artillery down, which imagine China with all the guys that they have to actually have some offensive punch behind it besides just one plane. It's
Right.
start collecting that. It's going to be tough for the Japanese to stop
That's
them
gonna
from getting all the way.
that's gonna
So
add up quick. All right, Japan. They have a bunch of options here. They get 5 IPCs if the Allies control all of the following territories. These are the Money Islands: Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and Celebes. We know what those are. 5 IPCs if the Axis control New South Wales, Sydney. So if they take Sydney, they get a 5 IPC bonus. 5 IPCs if they take Calcutta. Or Honolulu, they get another 5, and another 5 if they take San Francisco. Basically, any victory city, it looks like.
cities,
And
the
then,
4 captured for victory. So
right. So they get 5 IPCs if for holding any victory city. And they also get 5 IPCs if they're controlling Guam, Midway, Wake Island, Gilbert Islands, and the Solomon Islands. They have to control all of
So
those.
the hardest part of that is going to be the Solomons because the U.S. starts with so much forces in the Solomons. They would have to devote significant resources down there in order to take it. They start with 4 infantry and artillery on there, so
Right.
it's
So it's all of this essentially.
yep.
All right.
It's just further incentive for them to go a little bit south. But if they're going to win the economic game, it's going to be with money on the board. The only one of those bonuses that they get regularly is going to be the 4 money islands. So which they don't start with Celebes. That's the incentive for them to get that transports with their bid, so that they can get down there and take that. And then that's also the incentive why you saw the British go into Sumatra was now even if they take Celebes, they don't get their $5 bonus for that. So
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. And that is all of our national objectives. So let's
I
go
just
back to, we talked about convoys. There was a question about convoys and how this works. We hadn't covered this in the videos simply because we had it hasn't played a big role um, in this series. But if you want to talk about how it works, that'd be great.
Okay, so territories on the board that have convoy markers adjacent to it can be affected by those convoy markers. It's not as simple as just capturing it. You have to maintain, the enemy has to maintain a naval presence in that space. For every piece that rolls an offensive die, so not transports, not aircraft carriers, gets to roll one die for convoy disruption. And then submarines and planes, so fighters and tactical bombers, get to roll 2 dice each. And then 4s, 5s, and 6s do not count. Only 1s, 2s, and 3s count. And then you add up the figures on that on all of those dice, and then that's how much money. How do I explain this? That's how much less money that territory is worth to the person that's collecting. So, like, there's a Russian submarine starts on
this
the board.
triggers during. So let me try to jump in here. So
Sure.
The easier. Let me think about it. This, if I can say this a different way. So there's a Russian sub here, right?
Yep.
And so what that means is that on Germany's turn, when they go to collect their IPCs, when they go to collect income, the Russians get to roll 2 dice here because it's a sub.
Yeah. So they're attacking the German economy, but they can only attack the 3 IPCs that are in Norway. They can't take any other money. So that one sub is going to roll against the 3 IPCs from Norway. So he rolls 2 dice. 1s, 2s, and 3s count.
Okay. So if he rolls 2 1, if you say he rolls a 2 and a 6, then the Germans are only going to collect 1 IPC from Norway.
Right. And
so
we're not counting
Norway's production capability by 2. You're essentially you're sinking merchant ships.
Yep.
Right. That's the idea of this, right? You're sinking merchant ships that would service the territories that are adjacent to that sea zone. So the more damage you can do, the less productive that territory can be.
Right. So we're just chipping around the edges here, except for 2 territories. There's 2 convoy zones on the board that are very, very important. The first one is, like I said, 97, because that's the entire Italian income. And the second one is the one that's south of Manchuria, which is Sea Zone 19. That touches a lot of Japanese income. So if the Allies can ever get submarines in those spaces, they can do a lot of damage. The other one to note is in 109. Yeah, so that's Sea Zone 19. 109 is off of England. So if the Germans can get some submarines in 109, that's a lot less money for the UK to have. So like 109 touches both Scotland and the UK territory itself. So that's what, $8 that they can convoy disrupt there, and then there's also another convoy zone off of Canada in 106. So it's another couple bucks away from the UK income. So normally it's just chipping around the edges. It can add up quick though. So
yeah. Well, honestly, I don't think there's a better thing for this Russian sub to do.
Yeah,
right.
There really isn't.
Theory, it could come hang out in 110, but it wouldn't like that one sub's not going to make a difference, right? So this is kind of their best use for this.
Yeah, once Norway falls, there's really nothing else for that guy to do. He runs down to France, and then convoy disrupts off of Normandy, and then maybe he can make it into the Med or something like that afterwards. But that's pretty much his entire reason for existing. It's just to convoy disrupt the money from Norway.
All right. So I like it. So let's come back up here. Hey, welcome back. So awesome. So that is a pretty deep overview, I think, of the national objectives. And I think are there any other questions about national objectives and how they work and how they affect the game and anything like that? So we'll be happy to talk about that while we've got all this up here. Yeah, I got to say, I'm pleased with my little 3-minute put together slideshow here. That
Everybody say hi to my son. You can see him in the back.
Right.
He's
wanted to be on camera, but then got really shy. You see how that worked out? See how that? I see how it is. Deep Overview. Deep Overview was the name of my improv group in college. So I say Deep Overview. That's fair. That's a fair shot, Dave. Very nice. I say Deep Overview because we went deeper than I thought we were going to go, but you could do whole hour-long videos on the German national objectives here. It feels like so. Yes, you had a
By the
comment.
way, we got gifted a $400 million plane from the Qatari government, so we're gonna. That's gonna be the new Gear Force one.
Yes. Some of these objectives seem like they can detract from the main point of defeating an opponent. UK putting resources, example, UK putting resources into Egypt versus putting pressure on Germany. Any thoughts? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I was saying before, is that I feel like national objectives can steer strategies in a way that definitely can have an effect on a game. I mean, there's a reason why the national objectives that are in the anniversary edition are not included in tournament play, right? So because they will steer the strategy that's there. And come to think of it,
No,
I don't think I've ever played with the national objectives in anniversary.
I mean, I agree. You know, if you spend the entire game just chasing national bonuses, national objectives instead of trying to win, you're not going to win. So, but I know seasoned players. It's just an added incentive to go someplace. So I don't think the Norway move would be as powerful if it wasn't taking away the $5 bonus that the Germans generally rely on. But since Norway almost always falls anyways because it's $3 away from the Axis, I don't know. I like I said, I don't know if global would work, and global 42 in particular without them. If somebody wants to play test that and get back to me, then great. But it is what it is, and we're going to be using the national objectives in the global championship this year. So, but
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of Gen Con this year and Spring Gathering, I've been emailing back and forth with Greg about time clocks. Greg Smorey is the host of the Gen Con tournaments and Spring Gathering. So we've been going back and forth and talking with the community and amongst ourselves about how time clocks can be introduced to the game without being horribly disruptive, right? So this is the idea, and part of it is you've got to. When I think about tournament rules, I think about um, wanting to stay as true to the spirit of the game as possible, right? This is kind of my guiding principle when it comes to creating tournament rules. And this is a game that's designed to play for as long as it needs to play to determine a winner. But if we want to play it in a tournament setting, then we need to have a set amount of time that the game is played, right? And so when that time expires, then we need to figure out how do we look at the board and the current conditions and say, what is the, if this game were allowed to continue, who would be the most likely to win, right? And I think that I think that we end up a lot of times in the current tournament rule set playing to the rules rather than playing to the spirit of the game. And so one of the things that has often happened and has happened to me in tournament play, and I've already complained about it on earlier live streams. I won't take everybody down with it again, but I've lost final matches to people who intentionally slow played, right? Who intentionally said, I'm going to take an hour to play US 3 Russia 4 so that we only get 4 rounds over the course of 5 hours in 1942 second edition.
I mean, that's just not right. People are there to have fun, not to necessarily
right.
win, though.
Exactly. So, and for a while, I was mad at that particular player, the pair of players that I was playing against. But in the end, what it came down to was they were playing to the rules that were available to them, and they wanted to play to win, and that was how they. I don't think it's particularly sportsman, but it certainly is a way to win. So
Yeah, definitely find
we've
a way to quantify who would have won the game. How do you quantify that without creating a rule that people are then gonna take advantage of? I just, I mean, I think that these global rules work great. And the 125 IPCs and everything. Is it slightly allied biased? Yeah, maybe, but he's definitely changing it up this year. He might as well have just said Robin can't play USA anymore, but
Yeah. So
he's,
Greg
he's
sent out
changed.
an email. I didn't get all the details regarding the changes to global, and I'm not sure that they're 100% set. Um, but they're I didn't get the sense that they were dramatic changes. But when we were talking about time clocks, what I was trying to lay out was the idea of we need to figure out as a community, like, how do we introduce time clocks without them being wildly disruptive to the game. And so I think that needs to be a data driven solution, right? And
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
got to
think we've
be.
got enough data to figure that out
Yeah,
right now.
and I
So
100%. We
so
need
here's
to get together. We need to play test this.
yes.
So
So here's this I think Greg and I had a meeting of the minds this morning at like 7 o'clock this morning through a flurry of emails, and I
geez,
think this is what's going to happen. We're going to put time clocks on all the tables, every table, every tournament game. The casual games, I don't really care. Take as long as you want, but we're going to put a clock on every table. But there aren't going to be any particular rules that go with them.
yeah, and if I were you guys, I would want, especially in the final match, or maybe even in the semifinals of both of anniversary and global. I would recommend having a neutral observer run the time clock, just so that way it's fair and people aren't forgetting to hit the button or whatever.
Right.
So
Okay. So sort of. So what's going to happen is no pressure. But what we're going to tell everybody is, like, we're here to gather information. So, like, obviously, thinking specifically about 1942 second edition, the Allies are 3 powers, the Axis are only 2, right? So clearly the Allies need more time to be able to play all 3 powers versus the 2 powers that the Axis have to get through.
right, but generally the Axis start with more pieces on the board, so they have bigger decisions. But
Right.
I don't mean to.
Right. So let's find out. So let's put a clock on every table, and then just ask people when your turn is over. And your turn is over, by the way, after you've counted all of your IPCs and either written it down or said, okay, UK collects 38 IPCs.
Handed out the IPC
Clock,
chips, that kind of.
right?
Yep.
Then you touch the button and it starts the clock on the other side. If you've never seen a chess clock, they are used by children on a regular basis. They are like the easiest things
I'm sure
in
you
the
could just
world.
have it on phones so that you could just hit the button and
Right.
keep
So
track.
yes, but I don't want to count on everybody to be able to have a phone that works
That's
and
why I'm
that they
saying
don't get a phone call.
neutral server, and they can just hit the buttons. So, right. Yeah, and if we could have like a tracker like that for victory cities too, that would be ideal. Something or IPC, in case of global IPC count on the board, that kind of thing. So that way people can just
Japan
walk
collects
over and see who's winning and who's losing. So
Japan collects 45.
yep,
Simple as that, right?
yep.
And you go on to the next team. So then at the end, we will write down how many, how much time was used by both sides and how many rounds were played. Right? Okay. So now we know that
So we can
in these
oh.
12 games, what?
So we can publicly shame people that play slow.
Well, so that we know, right? So that we can see exactly, what the averages are. So if we can, we put out, we can see, there'll be 16 tables in action of Anniversary Edition in round 1 of the World Championship. So 16, 8, 24, 28. We'll have 31 games of Anniversary to be able to say, okay, the Axis used this much time, the Allies used this much time. That's a valuable piece of data. right? We'll have however many rounds we're going to have in 42-second edition. We'll have however many games we're going to have in global to be able to say, in this setup with this set of rules, this is how much each side used on average, without keeping track of like, this is how much time Robin, Steve, and Mike used. That's not the question. This is, they played the allies. How much time did the allies use?
On
So
average.
now we can say, when we set up the rules, we can say, okay, we've got 50 examples or 100 examples of global, and the average time used by the allies was this, the average time by the Axis was this. Any significant deviation from that will create some kind of penalty, right? So if we say that 42-second edition, we say that the allies should have an extra 20 minutes over the course of a 5-hour game to play their side, right? If that's what we determine, right, based on the averages. Then if you end up with somebody who uses 50 more minutes than the Axis, well, that's slower than we think should be, and then we need to come up with some kind of penalty for that. And if it happens to decide the game, then it happens to decide the game. But as far as I'm concerned, if you took an extra 30 minutes, then your move should have been 30 minutes better.
I agree.
Right? And so in theory, if you spent that extra time, then your position should be that much better. And so, I mean, I think about it in terms of chess. Like if I get into a particular spot and I am playing a 10-minute game of chess where I've only got 10 minutes on my clock and I need to take 45 seconds to think about this position and make a solid choice that's going to set my course for the rest of the game, then I've made that investment.
Right, and
the same
players
thing I think is true here.
Are a lot about, you know, one move or another move, one fight or another fight. Do I put this plane into here? Do I put it into there? You know, like you said in the video, no plan survives contact with the enemy. You know, it's a dice game. You got to get up there and you got to roll some freaking dice. So, and you know, when I tell players to speed up, I'm suddenly the bad guy, right? So I'm oh, hold on, wait a minute, I got to start all over again. I've heard that line so many times. You know, usually I'm ready to go as soon as the turn starts, but you know, sometimes you got to have conferences. Sometimes you got to talk to your allies. Sometimes you have to think, is this the right move? Is this the wrong move? Like I get that, but when you spend all day stressing over one or two battles, just roll the dice, man. Just there's no other way to do it. So, right.
So there's a couple of really good comments here that I want to address here. So, chess clocks absolutely can count down. That's absolutely true. But my thinking is, if a clock is counting down, then you only get 1 point of data. Who reached 0 first? Right? You only get 1 point of data. And if they get to 0, then you don't know how much further past 0 they went. If they get to 0, do they lose? Well, that kind of sucks. What if my clock is at 0 and Robin's clock is at 3 minutes? I used 3 minutes more than he did and I lost? That sucks. So this is why I think counting up on both sides gives us much more data in terms of like how much more time was used than the other side.
Absolutely.
That to me seems a lot more useful to me.
I completely agree. I wonder if we shouldn't have some kind of forum or debate about this at Battlefront Dayton, just like an hour at lunchtime or something, just so that we can all get together and debate whether or not we want to introduce chess clocks into the game. You know, in the end, it's Maury's call. It's not your call. It's not my call. It's his. But he seems to be open to the idea. And then, you know, what the rules for each variant are going to be. We got to figure out that. But I love a lot of your ideas that you sent me about, you know, points and this and that. And I'd be more than happy to play test that. But we're a long way from something that's actualized and is going to be present for the World Championship and the Global Championship at Gen Con, you know, this year or even next year. We have a lot of data to collect and a lot of debates and a lot of polls to take and all of that. We got to get the pulse of how it's going to affect everything.
Yeah.
So,
Charles, hey Charles, great to see you, brother. I agree with clocks, but part of the game is also figuring out how to win in 5, 6, or 7 round games. That's absolutely true. And I don't have a problem with a 5 round game in 42, in global, in anniversary, if both sides are using the same amount of time. What I have a problem with is when all of my pieces are ready, when it comes to be my turn, I make all my combat, we roll the dice, we're done, we turn it over, and then my opponent takes an hour to play US 3, Russia 4.
Absolutely,
That's
100%.
what I have a problem with. And so if a game is 5 rounds long, then that game is 5 rounds long. Now, I am of the opinion that just the act of placing the clocks on the table will make people more aware of the pace at which they're playing. And I think that we will see very few games at Gen Con this year with a clock on every table, or at the Spring Gathering. We'll see very few games that are 5 rounds of
Yeah,
any
you know,
style.
if I'm playing a game of global and I know that the game is only going to last 5 rounds, I do not want to be the Axis, because the Axis need that time to expand out in order to get that 125
Right.
IPCs.
Right.
So they're the last power I would want. And if you're playing as the Axis and you're taking more time than the Allies in global, you're definitely doing something wrong. So
Yep. So big log battles where poor die rolling causes an increased number of rounds to reach a decision will blow out the time. That will need to be considered. I've seen a battle for Moscow go on for 30 minutes. So yes, so combat is certainly needs to be factored in, but like we saw in round 2 of this game, there are very few combats that were more than 2 or 3 rolls. So you're going to have whole rounds that go by that are like that, where it's a lot of positioning and it's a lot of I want to be here, I want to be here, but without. And so that is going to make up for the big push into Berlin or to Tokyo or to Calcutta or to Moscow or whatever.
I
Now
think having a
there is.
neutral.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I think having a neutral observer at the board, I mean, if Mike was running the time clock, say for the World Championship, and so he's timing one, he's timing the other. If there is going to be a huge battle like that, then he could just add 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever to their allotment of time. So that's another reason that kind of, I would like the idea of, at least for the championships, at least having Mike present in order to run the clocks. And I know that might be asking a lot of them, but that would be
that's the trick. Is it practical, right? Like,
yeah,
there's going to be 16 tables in round 1 of the World Championship. There's no way
yeah,
that there could
way to split
possibly be
people up. But when it gets down to the closer rounds, when it comes to the championship, we're talking about the World Championship and the Global Championship of Axis and Allies. So I don't see any reason why they couldn't appoint one person to just be neutral to go in there to.
Well, I will say that one of the things that I told Greg was that my team would manage the clocks. Yeah, like, and not so much manage the clocks, but more like when it comes time to record all of the data, right? Like how many rounds went by, how Axis used this, Allies use this, all of that. So, but one of the things that is a potential tricky spot is on when I'm conducting combat, I have to wait for my opponent, hey buddy, to um, choose their losses, and so there is the or to roll their dice, right? So there is the opportunity there for somebody to still sandbag. I think it's a lot less, and I think it becomes a lot more obvious. So it's if you've got an opponent who all of a sudden starts rolling one die at a time, I mean, okay. Now, are there instances? Are there instances where right? Are there instances where like the defender needs a minute to think about, am I going to lose the carrier? Am I going to lose the fighter? Am I, is this time to lose the battleship? Like, and that's part of the game, and you allow for that moment of thought, right? But if that moment of thought goes on for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, right now we're going to start to um, it's the kind of thing we're going to start to take note of. So, and if need be, then rules can be developed. One of the things that I suggested was putting an egg timer on the table. So if you've got an opponent who's dragging their heels, selecting their losses, there's just a 20-second egg line timer or 15 to 30-second egg timer that you can just turn over at the table. But I think that's going to be pretty unusual. I don't see that happening all that often. But you never know. Sometimes people take an hour to do, US 3 Rush 4. So you'd have to have something to kind of stop that from happening.
Yeah, and I tell you, in this game in particular, people take this game so seriously, and it gets to the point where even me when I would first started playing, I would get really angry at myself or at the table or something if something went wrong. So I don't want people to get the wrong impression that what we're doing is we're dictating how you play. We're just talking about game flow. We're talking about fairness. We're going to keep it fair. We're going to keep it the game flowing. We're going to find some kind of way. I would propose that people that play Anniversary maybe help come up with the global rules, and then people that play global kind of help come up with the Anniversary rules and the 42 rules, just because that way it's kind of fair and impartial, and one person isn't. I don't feel qualified. I can give input in the global rules, but if I started coming up with the global rules, people would say, wait a minute, you're one of the global players, so
Right.
how can you come up? So I don't know. We'll find a fair and transparent process, and we'll find a way to do this. So
yeah. I think, like I said, I think it's got to be data driven, and I think the community's got to be involved, right? I don't like the idea of 1, 2, 3 people, 4 people, whatever, kind of sticking their finger in the wind and saying, this is what we think should be. When there's this opportunity to activate the community and say, let's test it at Gen Con, let's test it at Battlefront Dayton, let's build up a rule set, send it out to the community and say, hey, go test this. And here's a free chess app or chess clock app you can download on your phone so that you can collect the data. Here's a really easy Google form that you can use to say what you think and record your findings. So that by the time we get around to December, January, and we need to start eyeballing, Gen Con next year, Spring Gathering next year, Battlefront Dayton, in 2026. Like, now we can say, okay, these are the rule sets that we're going to try for this year. So it's a matter of working that out. But Ed Fearless is here. Great to see you, brother. Picked up his dice. He got those fancy. I think you got the Southwest dice, right?
nice.
From Dice Nest. So he just got those in the mail in Australia. I think I mailed them 2 or 3 years ago. They finally arrived down there. Great to see you. Thanks for coming by. All right.
So
yes.
the biggest question that I have that I've been getting outside of the balance of the game and this and that is how many times have I been running this strategy and how well has it worked for me? And I don't think it's not unbeatable, and like I said, I'll let Charles speak to that a little bit more. But I've been running this for 10 years now. And I think I showed you a couple of examples of places where I won. I was able to help the Soviets out, that kind of thing. But it's definitely not unbeatable. And one of the let's see, I want to read his question verbatim because I don't want to put words in his mouth. But I got a question about, there it is. Okay, Nathan, he was asking me, so I'm curious if you would have still elected to change your game strategy if the Russians weren't in such a strong position as they were going into US2. No, I would have not changed my game strategy at all. So I would have just done the Norway thing and then hope for the best in the Pacific and won or lost the game there. So it was not in my comfort zone to not buy the bombers and to not do the Norway thing. But they were so prepared for it. Number one, and number two, Stephen didn't need my help anymore, so he was gonna get into Eastern Europe at that rate, and there was nothing I could do to help him to do that. So it was time to change tack. But that's the just
Paul
wanted
made
to
a good
answer
point here. So I guarantee that they'll be complaining. It's people's favorite thing to do. Yes, you are never going to please all the people all the time. There's no doubt about that. So yes, we do our best to, I suppose, to set up an environment where it's fair for everybody and people can still have a good time, right? I will tell you that I played that entire tournament and had a blast. And then I was winning going into, obviously, I was winning going into that final, couple of turns. And then all of a sudden it wasn't any fun. And instead of going home having felt like I played a good game, even if I would have lost that game, I don't have a problem losing, right? If I lose, I lose. I want to lose a game that was at least played fairly. And I don't feel like that game was played fairly, so I left mad, and that was not how and I wondered how many other people were leaving feeling that way. And
Yeah.
we want to grow the community, so the way you grow this community is make sure that people are having a good time when they come to the events.
Yeah. He has 1,000 followers and defeat is an orphan, so it's
Right.
it's definitely more fun. But it's Axis versus allies. Somebody wins, somebody loses in these games.
Right. Yeah.
So
On talk of time and possible long battles, I know how much of an impact using hit dice have for efficiency, and if significant, should that become the future standard for tournament play, or is it now? No, hit dice are not the current tournament standard
the
for tournament play.
Renegade hit.
Yeah, Renegade made has issued a set of hit dice, and they're nice, and I like them better than most hit dice because they actually still have the numbers on them.
Yes.
Which I don't like hit dice that don't have the numbers on them because they're all different colors. Some of them white is one or blue is one, or I can't keep track, right? Like, and and I've and I'm on game 4 in 3 days, right? And I've seen 3 different sets of attack dice in front of me. I can't keep track of what is going on. I can lucky to remember to tie my shoes by the time you get to that point in the tournament, right? So
Well, thank you.
I
He says he's got dice older than me, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
what?
I don't feel so old anymore.
Oh, I can't keep track of them. No. And I also have a little bit of an advantage here because I spent so many years as a crap stealer. Like, if you roll a stack of dice, like I'll pick out the numbers very, very quickly. I'll tell you whether or not you've got a straight, because I also dealt a million hands of poker. So I look at
Nice.
numbers and dice very, very quickly. Not everybody can do that, and I get that. And so I like the Renegade attack dice because while they still have the little hit symbol on it, there's still a number on it. So you can actually see this is 4, this is, or if it's a blank, it's a blank, right? And it's a miss. So I don't know whether or not it will become the standard. It can speed up games, but I've also seen it lead to significant beefs at the table because
Yeah,
people end up going too fast.
I think it's a historical board game. They have their own. I don't want to diss them, but I think they have their own hit dice. It was either them or somebody else, and they would bring. I know Condi and his team. They would bring their hit dice, and they would throw them. But if you make a mistake on which dice are which, you got to re-roll the whole thing. I mean,
Right.
there's no.
So there's
no
a whole rules question around that, right?
If you roll 4s and you think it's 1s, I don't know.
Right. So this is what I was saying is like, so I've got 3 1s and 3 2s and 4 4s, and
right.
I pick up the wrong combination of dice and roll them. Okay, now what? Right.
So
now you end up making your own. Now you got a whole. Now you need a rule set to fix that problem.
Yeah, and somebody would have had to catch that, right? But if you're using your dice, I don't know what colors are which. So
exactly.
I am glad that Renegade came out with these, and I hope that they're going to be the standard going forward, so that everybody learns, which dice are which, and you can just take a look at it and make sure that your opponent rolled the right thing. So, but
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's a fair question. I know that the way the rules are right now is you can bring any dice that you want, and you can roll them, but you also have to allow your opponent to roll them if they want to.
They use the same dice, yeah. So when I bring my dice cup, you know, this is my lucky dice scope. I have to let my opponent use the dice scope, you know, which is fine. You know, it's all random anyways, so I'm not superstitious like that. But you know, if they do end up being weighted or something like that, you're gonna get banned. So I wouldn't try anything like that. But besides, it's just a fun game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thought. That the Renegade hit dice are similar in color, and while I make a big deal about it in all my videos when I'm doing like game reviews of like colorblind, like being colorblind, and I am not colorblind. My stepdad, who is one who kind of got me into this space,
They have
is
numbers on them. You said, Gary, they have the
right.
numbers
They've
on
got
them.
numbers on them, so that's really helpful. But for the red green colorblind folks, at a glance, at a distance, it could be a little bit harder to see them. But yeah, and 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 a lot of the different attack dice are like brighter colors: red, white, blue. I've seen yellow. Um, so it gets, but again, I don't know which are which, right? Because different companies have made different kinds of attack dice, and it's a
Yeah,
whole thing.
definitely. They always change the color schemes and everything like that. So you know, when I'm playing with just regular dice, I have a color scheme and I lay it out on the board and I say these are ones and these are twos and these are threes and these are fours. So when I roll those, everybody knows which is which. You know, we were playing a house rule up here in Minnesota. You can't ever just roll one die because I don't want to see somebody just picking up a die and dropping it into the box to try to manipulate the die roll. So you always roll 3 dice. Of course, only one of them counts, and it's only the off-colored die. But you know that way, when you throw it in the box, it at least knocks around a little bit, that kind of thing. So, but I don't want to enforce that. I don't want to be a jerk about it. But when you
Yeah, that
see
would be hard.
me, I'm only supposed to roll 1 die, and I roll 3. The only one that counts is the odd colored one. So, you know,
Yeah,
I do it.
yeah, that's a thought. I have seen people. So again, I worked in casinos for a long time. I was a craps dealer, and so I know how, and I know how to do it, and I know how to recognize um, what you're referring to is called a flat spin of a die, uh, where you're basically throwing this way to try to get it to spin on its top
Die,
and hit
yeah,
the side and stay one
glorious.
side up.
But goodness, we had a guy in Seattle that's all he ever did was pick up one individual die and drop it. Doesn't matter how big the battle was, and it just drove me up the wall.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't allow that. That wouldn't be cool. Like that's one. It takes forever, right? But the other way, so the way to make sure that people are doing that is to actually make sure that the die tumbles in the air, right? If they spin it, like, you have to drop it. You can't flick it, right? This is how you. I taught classes on how to do this, but anyway, so there's ways to recognize, and I have seen people try to do it, and most people aren't good enough at it for it to matter. So it's like,
I guess he's been practicing for 10 years.
yeah.
It works out.
So, but I will say that when we were playing in the World Championship in 2023, Doug and I were playing, and I picked up the wrong number of dice, and I rolled like I had like 8 twos to roll, and I think I rolled 9, and like I dropped them in the box, and my opponent rightfully like said, "That's 9 dice, right? You had got 8 to roll," and we re-rolled the box because the box was wrong, and so ever since then, what I do now, and I think you saw me do it in the live stream, is I'll pick up all the dice and I'll hold them out and I'll show them to Doug. This is 4 dice, right? Yes, this is 4 dice. Okay, I'm gonna roll these dice because you're thinking about a million things and you're jazzed up and the adrenaline's pumping and you're in the middle of the game and you're like, okay, here we go, and you're rolling the dice.
Been playing
So
for 3 days at Gen Con and sleeping 4 hours a night, and yeah, I totally get it. So
right, yeah, so
that's why you have a team. So
right, exactly, yeah, that's absolutely why you have a team. Yes, yeah, this drops 1 die. No, no, no. That's just annoying. That
yeah, I think Mel is watching, and that was the first time I saw the rolling 3 dice rule. I walked into the Source, which is the big gaming store here in Minneapolis, and I met these two guys, Roger Belfay, who has since passed away, and Rick Bonnell, and they were playing a game of 42, first edition. This was a long time ago, and like they would roll one dice on defense, but they would toss 3 in the box, and I'd be like, "What are you doing? You're only supposed to roll 1 die." Well, that's because they don't just pick up a die and toss it in the box. You got to roll 3 dice and one to be off color from the other ones, and that's the only one that counts. So,
yeah, no, I get the idea. I'm just, to me, I don't know. If somebody's choosing to roll 1 die at a time, that seems ridiculous to me. Like, anyway, but this is a solution to a fouled box is the phrase I'm gonna use, right? If you roll too many dice or like the wrong, you were supposed to roll a 3, you rolled a 4, whatever, right? So if the box is fouled, I think this is just an option I've never heard before, that the opponent gets to choose. If you roll too many, but still miss, they can elect to keep that roll.
I would just call it a miss roll, but I'm with you, Gary. I wouldn't go. I would insist that they roll it again, even if they freaking whiffed. All right, well, you rolled too many dice or whatever. As long as there's no malicious intent, I guess that's what you have to judge. You have to judge if there was intent to roll 1 extra die or something like that, or roll the wrong dice.
Right. And
I know from the players that I play with at global championships and in final tournaments that that there's no ill intent. These are great players, and they don't have to cheat to win. So
yeah, there's a phrase I like from poker, which is I'll beat you, but I'll never cheat you. Right. Like,
but I would agree with Charles. If there is malicious intent, then you should be able to just keep the roll. But I don't. That's where that's a judgment call, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting way to interpret that rule, though. Like, I think that's an interesting solution. I think that's kind of a fun idea. Old source location.
Dave Jura says the old source location and the new source location. It was at the old location on Snelling and Larpenteur in Roseville. So this is a long time ago. Goodness, I've been playing with these guys for quite a while. So Rick Bonnell and Roger Belfay and George Calbaugh and Mike Tredan and Nikki Swenson. It's Michael Haug, all the guys up here in Minnesota. There's a huge gaming group in Minnesota, but not all of us go to Gen Con. Not all of us play in global championships. So,
my wife is an accountant, by the way. Rolling more dice than necessary changes the odds. That's true.
Yes.
So you end up with different probabilities of success. So that's a valid point. Anybody ever thought about trying to play this game for money?
Who says we don't?
What? What? I didn't hear what you said.
I said, who says we don't?
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
We play for blood. We play for blood.
You first. You go ahead. Okay, well, that's cool. So yeah, there's another. I feel like I'm talking casinos. You got me talking casinos today, but the other phrase here is wherever there's money, there's somebody trying to steal it, and that is absolutely true. And so yes, if there was money on the line, then you certainly have But there are ways to set out rules that would account for just about any circumstance in this game, certainly. So
yeah, the way more prizes, at Gen Con or the Gathering, it's just when he awards prizes, it's from a lotto system. It's not because you won a certain thing. It's just trophies. Yeah, the trophies and the medals and the bragging rights and your name on a T-shirt and that kind of thing. So, and people come up to you and ask for your autograph if you're world champion or something like that. But there's no, there's nothing tangible behind it. So, and
someone asked you for your autograph?
Yeah, on a global box. Nobody's ever asked you for You're giving away the game.
Not people have asked me for it here, but no one's ever asked me for it on site.
Okay.
So now they will. Thank you for that, Robin. Which is fine. I don't care. Though I will say that I don't know if I should say this or not, but I went last year and I thought maybe somebody would ask me for an autograph. I wasn't banking on it, but I thought, well, if they do, I should probably be prepared. So I had my shiny pen, my Sharpie, ready to go if somebody wanted me to, and nobody did.
So. Well, I want your autograph, Gary. So.
Okay. Well, I think you already have it. I think I've already sent you something. But you won this Lord of the Rings wrist game, and I've already got. You also won that North Africa thing.
We'll autograph each other's Lord of the Rings box. So.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, Coaster. So like I said, I've signed. I've given autographs for people that have asked for them here, but I haven't had anybody like in person walk up and ask me for an autograph. There were a ton of people last year at Gen Con that walked up and said that they'd watched the videos and that they really enjoyed the videos, and that was lovely and that was great. And I handed out coasters and stickers and stuff to people who had who walked up and introduced me or introduced themselves to me and mentioned the channel or whatever. But no one asked me to sign them, which is fine.
Yeah,
I don't care.
There's a couple of people that they're just casual Access and Allies gamers, and they, I know one of them had a Europe 40 box and just asked me to sign that. So because I guess they were collecting signatures from global champions and anniversary champions, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's mostly selfies and that kind of thing. But there's nothing. My point is, there's nothing tangible behind it. There's no money involved. You don't walk out of there, with something. The first instance that I can think of where there's going to be something tangible behind it is going to be winning the. If whoever wins the championships at Battlefront Dayton, because it's going to be qualifier for that gets you an automatic ticket, right, to the World Championship or the Global Championship at Gen Con the following year. But that's like $12, so it's not the biggest deal.
So yes, to be very clear, I'm not buying badges to Gen Con.
Yeah, just tickets, right?
Just the ticket to whatever Access and Allies tournament the corresponding Access and Allies tournament that you played in.
You're going to be buying one set for the World Championship and one set for the Global Championship, right? So.
No, you wouldn't want.
No, not a qualifier.
What?
So you're just going to qualifier for the World Championship, not for
for 42 Global or for Anniversary.
So you're only buying one ticket?
No. For 42 and for Global and for Anniversary.
Right.
So it'd be two.
Okay.
Tickets, really.
So for 42 Global and Anniversary, and there's two people on a 42 team, and there's two people on a World Championship team. So.
Right. So I'm buying 7 tickets.
Buying 7 tickets. Okay.
Right. But not badges.
But not badges. So a badge is like
or travel or any of that. Like no. Let's be very clear about what was actually being offered. But yeah.
You can sleep on a cot in the corner, but
I don't know.
But anyways, just getting back to the game for a second. So, a lot of people have asked me how this Iraq move is legal. That we do, and it's a complicated section of the rule book, and it's not 100% crystal clear. But I will tell you, so when you attack a territory that's pro your enemy, or even a strict neutral that becomes pro your enemy, and you don't take the territory. So the rules are a little bit ambiguous about that. Do you have the slide queued up so that we could read it specifically?
For what?
For the neutral countries. Hold on, let me pull up the rule book.
For Russia? For the Soviets?
No, well, for the Russia going into Iraq thing.
Yeah, I got it. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way that it reads is I don't see it on here. If the or am I just lost my mind?
Let me find it. Okay, here it is. If the attack upon the formerly neutral territory is unsuccessful, the territory is not captured. Any remaining defending units stay in the territory but can't move. Of course, there is none. The territory remains uncontrolled. Place a national control marker on a face down to indicate its new status. But units from the side it's now allied with can move into it and take control of it and its remaining units the same way as if it were friendly neutral. So it doesn't say that you can land planes there. So this whole Russia thing moving into Iraq would have been negated if the Italians could just send a fighter over there, right? But we take that rule to mean that the territory reverts to its original status, just without the guys. So you would think that there would be a status change because the British just invaded that territory and they didn't take it. But so when we bring this up to tournaments, Mori has ruled that means that the territory just reverts to its original status without the three guys in it.
That's how I read it too. I mean, after when we were done talking about it, I went back and looked up that rule and I read it and I found it. That would have been if somebody had asked me that day, like, how do you read that rule? That's how I would have read it, because they didn't capture the territory, right? It's still a territory, but it's not going to generate the units more than once, right? So then, yeah, that.
But does it make them a co-belligerent, like they jump into the war on the Axis side, and therefore the Axis can land planes there? And there's just nowhere in the rule book that says that. So,
right.
It's very important, at least it's a huge coup if the Russians get that money. You might be thinking, well, it's only $3 extra a turn. But at least for the Soviets, first off, they can use all the help that they can get, putting more units
Typically,
down.
Yeah.
The big thing is not only parity with the Germans, but the big thing is it gets them closer to the magic number of 50. And if I haven't explained, the Soviets in $50 yet, if the Soviets ever in a position where they're making 50 IPCs turn over turn, it's very difficult for the Germans to ever get into Russia at that point, because they start with 2 minor factories that are really close to the front, and they're the nearest. There's one in Leningrad, there's one in Ukraine, and then there's the major factory that's back in Russia. So they don't want to have to build stacks of guys way back in Russia. They want to build it right there at the front. So that leaves them two minor factories that can both produce 3 units. So if you take a look, do you have a slide with showing the Eastern Front?
Yes. Stand by.
So first off, if they're making 50 a turn, like I said, that they've. Hi. Can you go upstairs?
I don't want to.
Okay, you can sit down and be quiet.
I was up there.
Okay. Sorry.
All right.
So, first off, they would probably have superiority over the Germans at that point, at least financially. But they start with 2 minor complexes, one in Leningrad and one in Ukraine. So if you take a look at where those positions are on the board, most of the action on the Eastern Front is fought over like Eastern Poland, Belarus, Western Ukraine, Poland itself, Slovakia, Hungary, those kind of territories. Both of those spaces are 2 spaces away from pretty much everywhere on the Eastern Front. So if we're talking about buying mobile units, one of the most powerful things that you can buy is going to be 2 mechs and a tank at each of those spaces, because then it gives you the punching power of the tank and the defense of the mechs. So if you count up 4 mechs and 2 tanks, and then if you take a look at the position of Moscow where that airbase is, and we're talking about buying 2 tacticals to pair with those tanks back there in Moscow, 4 mechs, 2 tanks, and 2 tacticals is 50 IPCs. I don't really know how if the Russians are making more than that, great. But if they're making less than that, then it's going to detract from their ability to build that every turn. And once they're building at 50 IPCs and they're throwing all of those units, as soon as you put those mechs and tanks down in Leningrad and in Ukraine, they're right in the fight, and the Germans have to account for that. Where the Germans are building all the way back in Berlin, so I would say that's the tipping point. That's the magic number for the Soviets. It's usually what we talk about. What the goal is to make 50 IPCs a turn with the Soviet Union. And our goal when we're playing as the bad guys, as the Germans, is to stop that from happening. So it's that Iraq gets $5 more towards that 50. So all they need to do is pick up 1 territory, and they're making over that. So
right. All right, I like
that's
it.
mine.
All right, so we are getting on in time, and like I said, I have a 6 a.m. flight to head over to Duel in Dayton, which we're really excited about. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, have a lot. Chad Condi is going to that. He texted me before, so Condi will be there, and Rick Bonnell. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
So
that's good.
he said
he and Jed had something come up, but that's all right. I'm fantastic. Then I will be seeing them tomorrow at in Dayton. So that's awesome. All right. So today's live stream was sponsored by our friends, Doug Friend at Historical Board Gaming. And so we've got a couple of fantastic prizes to give away from them. And then I'm going to go see if I can pull down one of the diplomacy prizes and give that one away as well. So we're going to do 3 prizes today. The first one is a full set of Italian units for North Africa. We've shown pictures of these in the past. So this is the Italian units for North Africa, but you could use them, I suppose you could use them in global as well. So I think they're actually very cool. They look great. I think they look great. And there's sea mines here and land mines and stuff that are I think are really, really
we're gonna
sharp.
have a ruling from Smorian whether or not we can use individual pieces. I don't know. He nuked my painted pieces that you saw years ago, so we can't play with those anymore. But
yes, no, I love the painted pieces, and I think they're very cool, but they make it really hard to because everyone's going to paint them differently, right? So it's hard to like look at a map and see like, why is that American tank black?
So if HBG sold painted pieces that we could use in tournaments, I would be there. So totally, I'd be there for that.
Yeah. Okay. So also included in the Italian North Africa units are scout cars, UK scout cars that are a healthy size, that are
All
a little
right.
easier to see and to grab. They're not the micro cars.
The one that you need with the tweezers to pick it up.
Yeah, I will say Matt Hyra, who's the designer of North Africa, when I asked him about it, he's like, "What are you talking about? They're naturally camouflage. It's a feature of the game. I don't want to hear about it anymore." They're sneaky, right? And they're tan colored against a tan map. They're easy to forget. Like that's a feature of the game, not a bug.
Have you ever seen this as Spinal Tap? Yeah. I don't think for a moment that the problem was that the band was off. I think the problem may have been that there was a Stonehenge monument on stage that was this tall.
Right. So our second HPG prize is a set of the French units. Speaking of our Vichy French units, we've got some French units to give away, and these are actually very, very cool. I do like these quite a bit. And of course, whoever wins these also needs a set of scout cars. So we'll be sending both of these across to whomever wins these. So we'll go with those, and I'm going to grab
some diplomacy gear.
Yeah, some diplomacy gear, and actually, I think, do I have that? Yes, I do actually. Perfect. Okay, we'll just give away a game of diplomacy. The whole game. We're giving away the whole game of diplomacy. It's pretty cool.
I'll take that.
So these are from our friends at Renegade via Tom Haver. Big Claire. So,
You can tell.
all right. So let's head over to the Wheel-O prizes. I have done a little bit of preening of the wheel. Folks that have won recently have been removed, and folks that have won and not claimed. There's a couple of people that I took off the list that have won and not claimed. Oh, I think we lost Robin. We'll see if he comes back. We'll see if he dials back in. I think there was some mappage that was coming off the wall there. I think is what we saw at the end there. But that's all right. If he calls back in, we'll bring him back in. But for now, let's head over to the Wheel-O. That is not the right screen. Oh my God. Here we go. There we go. Oh, here he comes. He's back. All right. Hey, welcome back.
Babies.
All right. So first up, we have an Echo. There we go. Let's make that stop. All right. So we've got the Italians and the UK Scout car. Who's going to take it home? We need a drum roll. Timpani, drum roll. From our friends at Historical Board Gaming, we're so grateful for their support for this entire series that we are glad to be giving away to Chicago Pundits. Yay! So, if you are Chicago Pundits, please reach out to us on the Discord server or through our Facebook page within the next 2 weeks, and we will make sure that these make their way to Chicago. Fantastic.
The new Pope. You might have to send them to Rome.
So what?
You might have to send them to Rome. That's for the new Pope. So.
Oh, right. That's true. Chicago Pundit, I guess he doesn't necessarily have to live in Chicago, but best guess. All right. Next up, we have the set of French pieces, Vive la France, and a set of UK Scout cars, again, from our friends at Historical Board Gaming. Timpani, roll. Here we go. Who's going to take this one home? I should also mention that I've added a couple of add a spin, win, roll again. Jon
yeah, we're never going to get that.
Yes,
Jon Bosch.
my man. Jon Bosch taking it home. He's getting a set of the French pieces and the UK Scout cars. That's awesome. What?
We can play Jon.
Yes. So that's awesome. Jon won a couple of prizes. That's very cool. Again, thank you to Historical Board Gaming. Jamie has dropped the link in there so that you can head over there and buy your favorite Axis Allies accessories. And Global War 36 is a really great game that they have. We're looking forward to learning more about that when they come to Battlefront Dayton, which should be very cool. So congrats to Jon. That's awesome. And he is, I believe he is our very first member. We missed the applause for Jon. Jon, applause for Jon. Jon, I believe, was actually our very first member. And all this time, he's been on this wheel this whole time, and he's never won. So congrats to Jon for taking home the prize from HBG. Now for diplomacy. This is going to be a big game for us at Battlefront Dayton. We're going to do the first triathlon. We're going to play this one. We're going to play Era of Empire, which is on this side, Era of Empire. And we're going to play a game that is yet to be named that will world premiere at our event. We're super excited about that. Who is going to take this one home? Let's find out. Timpani. This one is from Tom Haver via Renegade Games. And let's see who's taking this one home.
Corgis.
John Kuntz, who I believe we saw here earlier today. Fantastic. So congrats to John. Yay. So very cool. Congrats to Jon Kuntz, Jon Bosch, and the Chicago Pundit for winning today's prizes. That is fantastic. We've had a really great time hanging out with everybody, and you guys have been just such a great group to work with and to play with. We hope that you've enjoyed the series so far as well. We are going to be off next week. Let me look at a calendar real quick and see if I can give you guys exact dates as to when we're going to be up next. Our next, today is the 16th. So my goal, we've got a couple of things happening, Duel in Dayton, and then it's Memorial Day weekend, and I'd like to actually, see my family, which is great. Then we're at the spring gathering, and so my goal is to have part 3 of the series out the first week of June before we go to spring gathering. And then we like to do the live stream from the spring gathering on Friday night. Now, this might be a little tricky because, like I said, Doug and I are going to be playing. Robin's going to be playing global, so there may be some. We'll keep you updated with the programming. So the show might start at 8 instead of 7, depending on where we are. We may be eating dinner at that time, so because we may have been playing all day. So we'll have a lot of that. We're looking forward to meeting a lot of you at the spring gathering. We're going to have Brian and Tracy Hyde are going to be at the spring gathering with us. Robin will be there, of course. Doug will be back, and he'll be there with us. So we're looking forward to that. If you're going to be at the spring gathering out here, please let us know. I think some of the folks from Chicago are coming in. Charles, I'm coming in on Thursday because I think we're going to do that live stream on Thursday nights. I may actually drive in on Wednesday. We'll have to see what it looks like because I'll have to set up some stuff. John, you already have 3 copies of Diplomacy. Is that what you're telling me? You have 3 copies of Diplomacy? Is that true?
Enterprise spin again.
No. All right, John, you and I'll talk offline. We may be able to switch this out for something else if you already got that many copies of this game. Okay, we'll talk. If you're, find me on the Discord server or on Facebook, and we'll connect and we'll work this out because that seems a little silly to send you your 4th copy of Diplomacy. I guess you can play with 28 people at the same time. I guess I don't know, but that's cool. But yeah, let us know. But also, and Jamie, God love her, she has placed the Battlefront Dayton link in there. Badges are on sale. We have not.
He's making funny faces at you, Jake.
Yes, including the historical one. That's cool. Is it your bedtime? It's my bedtime. I'll tell you that. So the link for Battlefront Dayton is out there. Badges are available. We've already got lots of people that have already signed up. It should be a lot of fun. The place looks great. We're really excited about being all that. I can't with this. I don't even know what to do with this now. I can't do it. I'm trying to focus, everybody. We're almost there. We're almost done. So if you are interested in joining us in Dayton, please jump over to that link and let us know by buying your badge, which is great. Badges for the 3-day event are $140. They will include an entry into the Access and Allies, one of the Access and Allies events, but it'll also include the lunch buffet on Saturday and Sunday, which is pretty cool. And your room rate is only $95. It includes the breakfast buffet. So the only thing that you'll be buying in terms of food is whatever snacks you want, but also dinner. So, and there's lots of restaurants in the area because they're right next to the base. So there's lots of restaurants that are actually pretty good in the area there. So we'll have that one. Lots of options there. Plus the restaurant that's on site. If you don't want to go out, the restaurant will still be open. And we ate there when we were there last week, and it was really pretty good. So it should be a pretty good event. I'm excited about it. And what else? Robin, is that it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see everybody at the gathering. Gen Con tickets go on sale on Sunday, so make sure you select your events and put them on your wish lists, because otherwise you might not get in. So
yes, absolutely. Good reminder. So Gen Con tickets go on sale on Sunday. So make sure that you are staying on top of that if you want to play in the Access and Allies events at Gen Con. They are going to go fast. So make sure that you're on top of that. All right, I think that is going to wrap it up for us. We've got to pack up some stuff and get ready to head to Dayton for, I heard there's a duel in Dayton to go check out, learn about the young grasshopper variant. So,
like and subscribe and hit that notification bell and support Board Game Nation.
my man, excellent. Yes, so please hit that like button on the way out the door. And if you are interested in becoming a member, now is a great time because it will also give you, when you buy your badge, if you're a member, make sure that you're buying the member badge because that will give you early access to the events once we get them scheduled on the tabletop events page. To be able to register for the event that you want, you'll have preferential treatment when it comes to that. Plus, we're going to do a member-only event at Battlefront Dayton that'll be just for members. So if that's something that you are interested in being a part of, click that join button and pick the membership level that's right for you. Plus, all the cool kids have got the badges and stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyway, all right, friends. Well, it has been a lot of fun. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you in a couple of weeks from the spring gathering. Thank you all for watching. Have a great night.